Hello, GTTN Groups. So here we are, a couple of weeks into 2019, and we are continuing to move forward in the vision for this year, 2019. The vision is "Let it out, it's in you," based on the book of Matthew. Let your light so shine in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Let your light shine so much that people will be attracted to God. I think light is attractive. So in continuation with this theme, I remind you of Sunday. I don't know, some of you were there, maybe you were not there Sunday, but I remind you of two stories that I told in both services. I talked about the light of a house, the lighthouse keeper, where he was in charge of producing light in a rocky coast where ships will travel during the night, and his job was to keep the oil burning, and it was those old days where the lights were produced by oil. So his job was to keep that flame on, to warn ships that there was a town there, or rocky coast that they could run into. So, a supply of oil came, and as the people in the town found out, they came to borrow oil, one for his to keep his children warm, the other one that needed to keep a light in his house for his kids, and another one needed it to finish a job that he was given. So at the end of the month, he found out that the oil supply was so low that eventually the beacon went out. And that night, a lot of ships perished, a lot of people died because of his negligence to keep the light on. So when he apologized and said, "I'm so sorry that I let the light out or let the light die," they told him, "Your job is to keep the light burning no matter what. Your job is to protect the supply of oil, to keep this light burning, because the life of many depend on it." So the number one point we made Sunday was, our light is so a lot of people can be warned of dangers ahead. We talked about the light being a way to show the way, to protect people from dangerous places, to show the way the people should go. And the other one is to keep your life burning, because you are to bring that light and fire to other people. The Olympic runner who broke his record taking the torch from Athens to where the Olympics were, and by the time he got there, the light got out. It was off. The light was turned off, or put out, however you want to say it. And when he got there to the Olympics, they asked him, "Where's the light?" And he says, "Well, it burned out a long time ago. It just shut off. But I broke my own record." And they told him, "You're not here to break your own record. You are here to make it with the light, to bring the light, because the Olympics needs to be lit up, kind of thing." So there's two reasons why we keep our lights burning. Number one, to show dangerous places to people, to show the way, to keep the path clear for people. And another one is the fire that we have. We are to be contagious with the fire, to give it to somebody else. So, like the Olympic runner, we are to protect the light no matter what. They told them if snow comes, water, if it rains, if the wind comes, you stop, you protect the light, because you have to bring the light alive when you get there. So I believe the Lord is telling us the same thing. At the end of your life, at the end of everything you do, you have to keep that light burning. You have to keep for the sake of other people. And this is why Paul told Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 6, "For this reason," he says, "I remind you to fan into flame the fire, the gift which is in you." And then verse 5, Paul reminds him and tells him, "I remind you of the faith that was in you, in your grandma first, and then in your mother. I remind you of that flame that was in them, and is now in you. And then he says, for this reason, I remind you to fan into fire. In other words, fan into fire means that maybe there's coals, they're still burning, there's some smoke there, but the moment you stop fanning into fire, that fire comes on again, and that fire begins to burn again. And he told them this while he was in prison. Remember that Paul was a prisoner in a dungeon. He was ready to be put to death. If you remember when Paul wrote to Timothy, the first Timothy letter was, he was under house arrest, so he was fine. He could stay at his house, and a soldier will take care of him. But the second time he writes this letter, for the Lord has not given us a spirit of fear, but a power of love and self-control. When he told them that, he was already in prison, ready to die. So he told them, I remind you, I'm persuaded that this fire that is in you was in your grandma, was in your mother, and now lives in you. Fan it into flame. Because, Timothy was discouraged. He was ready to quit because people were criticizing him. And he says, no. Don't have fear of people. Don't let people put out your fire. Because that fire is the very thing that will take you to the end. So don't let anything put out the fire in you. So the same thing is for us today. Don't let anything to quench the fire. I call them fire extinguishers. Fire extinguishers are a good thing if your kitchen is on fire, but they're not a good thing if they're trying to put out the fire that is in us. And let me give you some fire extinguishers in your life. This is what Paul is trying to tell Timothy. Listen, you're allowing the fear, the opinions of people to extinguish the fire that is in you. Fan it into flame. Bring it back alive. The Spanish Bible says, aviva means bring it back to life again because it's in you. And that is the theme for 2019. It's in you. Let it out. Fan it into flame because that fire is very important. So what are the fire extinguishers that you and I deal with in every day that trying to put out the fire so we will not be a light in the darkness? And a lot of people will not have the direction that they need, and people will make decisions in the dark, and it'll have terrible consequences. We are to show the light. Well, number one fire extinguisher is not spending enough time with God. Remember, the further you are from the source of light, the dimmer your light becomes. So if you want to have light and be a light in the darkness, you have to stay close to the source. So not spending time with God alone puts out your fire. Number two, fear talk more than faith talk. When you talk more fear than faith, your fire begins to dim or dwindle in your life. So make sure that whenever you talk more faith than fear, because fear makes the fire go out. Number three, limiting God. We begin to limit God, and can be done, it can be done, it can be done. It begins to discourage you and begins to put the fire out. For the fear of men, men's opinions. When you allow men's opinions to matter too much, that light begins to go out. Paul said this in Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. Am I trying to win humans' approval? Or am I trying to win God's approval? If I was trying to please people, I would not be a servant of God anymore, he said. So listen to what God thinks about you. God's opinion is more important than people's opinions. I call it fear of men. If you allow the fear of men to infiltrate your heart, you will soon be discouraged and your light will be put out. It's a fire extinguisher. Broken focus is another thing. It's trying to do too much. You are all over the place, Laser is light electricity that is concentrated. That's what a laser beam is. It's light concentrated. So when you're trying to do too much, you become this shotgun effect. So you get fatigued, you get tired, and that will put out your fire in you. And then as a result of broken focus, fatigue comes in. And fatigue always burns out the fire in you. So remember that decisions made in the dark leads you and people to regrettable consequences. Our job as Christians is to remove the darkness. Wherever you go, bring light to your family, bring light to your job, bring light to your school. Wherever you go, you are the light. The Bible says, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 8, for you were once darkness. He doesn't say you were in darkness or no, he says you once were darkness. You didn't have any light on yourselves. Did you know that you and I don't have any light on it? We are lightless objects. There's no light in us. But now you are light in the Lord. The moment you got close to the Lord, guess what? You begin to shine light. Remember that the moon doesn't have a light in itself. The moon only reflects the light of the sun. So the sun reflects the light on the moon, and the moon reflects it back to the earth. And the same way you and I, we were once darkness without God. We are like the moon. And until the sun begins to shine its light on us, now we can reflect that light into other people. So our job is to reflect God's light, and we are to reflect the light of God. Remember, you and I are not projectors. We are reflectors. We are screens. God is the projector. We only reflect what He projects in us. And our job is to keep our screen clean with no blemishes, with no holes, with no wrinkling, with no any kind of staining. Because the moment we get stained or become holy, we begin to reflect very poorly what God is projecting on us. So our job and our vision is to keep our light burning this year. Don't let your light be put out. Be careful with these fire extinguishers that are trying to put So I remind you, like Paul did Timothy, to fan into flame that fire that is in you. Let it out so people can see. Don't put it under a bowl. Put it in a high place where it can shine the whole house and be a light and when we are like that, Grace to the Nations, we're going to be more attractive and we are going to be more effective in this world that is getting darker and darker. God bless you. Have a wonderful meeting.